Hello, everybody. This is Anna Sabramowicz. I hope you're having a fabulous Thursday. My goodness, where has the week gone? I hope you're having a wonderful week so far, and it's full of learning, engagement, and some serious wins. Now, if not, maybe I can help. Now, I talk about scenarios, how to design them, how to effectively work with subject matter experts and top performers so you can get everything that you need from them to design things that really mean something. And I think that there's a question that's been coming up, and I thought I would address it because I think that there's a misconception about getting started with scenarios in this world and basically where I've come from to get to this particular point where I have the ability to actually help other people do this, right? So I get this question from people who are just starting with their instructional design, or they're going out on their own. And one of the things they'll say, well, Anna, it's easy for you to say, I'm going to work on a scenario project because you already have all this experience. You already have all these projects. Broken Coworker is a hit. You know, who am I to pitch this stuff? Who am I to get the projects that I want? I have to take whatever comes my way, right? And I totally get that because I have been there. Like, even, it's funny, most people don't realize when I was working as an instructional designer, and then I quit my job and moved to start off being my own freelance instructional designer and started a business and all that stuff. And one of the things that propelled me to do that was because I wanted to build the kinds of projects that I wanted to work on, the kinds of things that would make me happy. And in the very beginning, I actually took on projects that I thought I could make better because I would be 100% in charge. But to be honest with you, I still, at that point when I first started out, I didn't know the patterns or what I needed. I didn't have systems in place to actually design things that made me happy. So I was on a project. It was a pretty huge project. It was like 12 modules. And that's great, right? You're like, all right, job security for a freelancer. But what happens is, what happens when you get those projects is all of a sudden you still have to not only balance the idea that you're trying to design something that people will actually enjoy going through, 12 modules worth. And also at the same time, you're figuring out your process to try and make that streamlined. And also you're basically figuring out as you go, which is extremely frustrating because as far as all the things that I had read, all the project teams I had been on, everything was always so agile in the term that we were like flying by the seat of our pants. There were no processes. Nobody was going back. That's one of the challenges. Nobody was going back to look over the projects and say, which ones have been so successful and so well received? Can we draw some lessons from that so that we can actually do more of that and throw the rest away? So that idea of really just getting rid of the fluff and being more direct with our customers to say, hey, we know this, we've done this, we've reflected on this. This is a process that will actually help you. Let us guide you. That I didn't learn for a very long time. And so what I ended up doing is working on projects where the customer would dictate what they thought they needed. I didn't get the input that I needed up front to actually design an experience that would mean something, because guess what? I'm supposed to be the learning expert, and at this point, I'm not. I'm letting somebody who has no idea about learning, or e-learning for that matter, dictate terms to me based on what they've seen out in the world, but they might not have a clue about learning. So that's a very difficult situation to be in. So when I launched Broken Coworker with my partner, Ryan, really what it was this idea that I could separate myself from the constraints of somebody else's ideas about what learning should be and launch this scenario-based project. And I really wanted to focus it on active-based learning, where somebody is driving, the learner is driving the process, the learner is driving the decision-making, and they're not being told what to do or how to think. They're making all those decisions for themselves. That's what I wanted to do. So when I launched it with him, I really didn't think it was going to go over very well. I actually thought I was going to be like a little bit of a fool of myself, because it has video in it. It's over the top consequences, which I thought would be helpful for people, right? And but it was kind of like it was a very personal project in that way. So what happened is it was a grand success. In fact, 5 years ago that we launched it today, it is still used in like instructional design, scenario design, like courses to teach people how to do scenarios. To be honest with you, when that first came out, that scenario was launched, I had no clue that this was a good framework for learning. It was something that I came up with, I stumbled upon intuitively, that we designed as a result of the things that we liked out there and pulled in from. And one of the things that was actually fantastic was that it had such an overwhelming positive feedback loop. So after Broken Coworker was launched, I was like, all right, that's a one-off. That's not, I didn't believe in myself enough to say, there's a reason this is working. There's a reason that the people are enjoying this. I didn't get it. And that took a while. So when people say, oh, it's easy for you, you designed this thing, I actually didn't have the confidence and the belief in myself and my ideas to actually take that to the next level right away. I actually let that sit for a while and took on projects that, in fact, probably reduced my skill set instead of increasing it. And then after a while, after a reflection and suffering some more, because every time you do a project, every single time you do a project that either is not maximizing on your skill set, and you end up doing like basically things that you're making slides pretty, it just kills you because you know that this is nothing that you can actually build on. And if it's something that does not make you happy, it's not going to make somebody who's being forced to participate in it happy, right? Hi, Patricia. Thanks for joining. And so for a while, I didn't get that. So for a while, I kept on taking on projects that sucked. And then almost like a feedback loop started coming in for me. And I thought, I started seeing things out there because I now noticed them. And I also started incorporating scenarios into my projects. And I realized after that, almost like, seriously, it would have been like somebody was like throwing something in my face and I kept on not noticing it. And then finally it clicked. And I was like, wait a minute, there is a framework here. There is a pattern here that really works. What is it? How come, I'm noticing these things and they're actually working? So the scenario pattern came out of it wasn't like an instant, aha, I get it, I'm now an expert. It was more like I stumbled on it, I messed up, I didn't even look back at it. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, that is good. How come people keep on telling me that they're enjoying it? Maybe there's something behind this. So if you've struggled with something, you didn't get it right away, please do not give up. This is actually the part of the journey. Hopefully it won't be so painful for you to sometimes figure out what is actually working and go back and say, this is working. I was right. This is good. I'm not crazy. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So one of the things that also happened is I was all wrong. I really was all wrong about what it takes to work with a subject matter expert. Now, I remember, and I don't need to even remember, I have all these guides that I created about, I got obsessed with creating resources to support my processes and workflows, because the only way you can really iterate on your work is to actually capture what you're actually doing really well, right? So here I am, and I'm putting out this stuff that's, to be honest with you, wrong about how to engage with a subject matter expert. And I don't know if I got that because it's kind of like some of those legacy ideas that happen where you're taught something in university. And to be honest with you, I was taught how to design learning by people who had never designed online learning before, people who didn't know what it took to engage online learners, people who didn't participate in online learning themselves, people who had never developed anything online. So I'm getting, basically I'm kind of these grandfathered strategies I'm pulling from them, where the extent of their distance learning was actually designing things in a book and sending that book to somebody. Like these were my mentors, right, or teachers. So I brought this legacy belief with me about how to work with a subject matter expert. And the other thing is that they were talking about designing learning for other academics, from academics. And I was now transitioning and had easily transitioned into the corporate world, but that's a different beast. That's a different way of designing for people. This is like, we're no longer talking about, some sort of, we're not talking about theories anymore about how people learn. We actually have to, show real context, real application. People can't sit around for 12 weeks just exploring concepts. We actually have to have them practice things, which is a completely different way of designing. And so also your subject matter expert is a different person. They're a top performer. They're not some professor who just wants to share or a researcher who wants to share their knowledge. They're actually a practitioner who we have to source info out of. So I see a lot of people, they're saying things like, yeah, we have to get the subject matter expert involved. We have to get their approval, their buy-in. And I'm like, no, they're not interested in our stuff. Our project is secondary to their primary goal, which is to be an expert, right? And if somebody is really interested in your learning project, it's probably because they're not really involved in their expert. I got to be honest with you. People who are real experts don't have time for you usually. So you have to be very strategic about where you're pulling that out, how you're pulling that out, right? So one of the things I learned quickly is that my idea is about that. And I kept on trying to shorten that time and shorten the time, but there was still these pieces where I was still relying too much and becoming hostage to somebody else's ideas about what online learning should be when I was the one immersed in that world and I knew what best practices were. So how do you get around that, right? And that's when I developed my interview system, which has nothing to do with bringing this person on to make sure that they understand what e-learning is, because they don't care, really. Let's be honest, they don't care. They care about being an expert. But really asking them the kinds of questions that if they saw the final product, when they do, they'll be like, wow, this is my words. This is great. But I didn't have the overwhelm or the frustration or I wasn't intimidated by that person, because my process is to ask them targeted, focused questions that have everything to do with filling in the framework that I've decided we're going to use. So it takes the pressure off of me trying to teach somebody instructional design in a kickoff session, which is impossible, right? You're never going to be able to do that. And that's what a lot of us try to do. I've been there. I have done that. I've tried to onboard people to my world, to my profession. That's ridiculous. So basically this whole conversation that I was just talking to you about right now is just me saying, this is not easy when you're starting out by yourself. This is not easy even when you're working in a place, because you are constantly so smothered by work that to be able to look back at your projects, evaluate their effectiveness, evaluate just your own processes, it's a lot of work. And also we have a lot of legacy behaviors that are from a different world. We're trying to fit them into our world, and we're designing experiences that are way different than the world that was teaching us on how to be an instructional designer, on how to be an e-learning developer, how learning works. Completely different. So the adjustment has to be made. So scenarios. If you want to get good at this stuff, just keep watching these videos, because really that's what I talk about here. And it's not really just about scenarios. It's about how to work effectively with subject matter experts, because more and more we're trying to tap into top level knowledge. And if you're not comfortable doing that and you don't have a system for doing that effectively, your projects will break or you will be delayed, because that's inevitable. with other people's priorities being more important than your own, right? So the other way to get good at this is to work with somebody who's done it before, and you can benefit from my system. So in May, we are launching another cohort where you can work alongside with me and 9 other people on a scenario project. We walk you from launching that baby, getting all the right data, all the way to an interactive script that you can then take, hand off to a developer and go build my vision. And I think one of the most valuable things is us working through, let's say throughout the 6 weeks, what we do is we deconstruct models that work. So you can, at the very end of that 6 weeks, have this toolkit, and you're no longer going, let's start from scratch, let's start from ideation. You have a pattern that if you hear certain kinds of needs, words, or goals, you can say, I know what that needs. I know what fits well here. Pull it off the shelf and say, this is it. This is cool. We can tweak it and modify it, but guess what? It'll work. And I know it'll work because it's a proven system. And so that certainty, I think that's one of the things that people are really looking for, is that if you haven't built these things before, you haven't launched your own things, or you haven't really refined your process, you're not going to be as punchy when you come into those conversations and pitching those projects and offering your expertise and solutions, because you don't feel confident enough because you don't have a proven system behind you. And you can say, it's still up for discussion. It's not. It's not when you have a proven system and a framework that you can launch and deploy. And that's the goal of that. And then the other piece is, because I've worked with students before, people fall off because they get stuck and then they have nobody to talk to about how they got stuck. So they just try and basically brute force through to project completion, or they cut corners because they need to meet timelines and they haven't streamlined the process enough to actually allow them to build things that are meaningful. I was actually talking to somebody this morning saying that when because their process wasn't robust enough, or they didn't anticipate for changes to come in, they had to cut the interactions and the design pieces that they were going to do to engage people, because they simply couldn't accommodate, they didn't work it into their system to actually have feedback. And so the only people that really suffered is the learner, right? Because now you have to cut the interactivity because it takes up so much time for you to design it, which shouldn't be the case. So that was unfortunate. But one of the things that this also provides is a place where you can discuss the kinds of things that we really need to consider as scenario designers that you can't discuss with other people on your team. A lot of the people that I'm working with are a one-person department. And it's actually a comment that came back saying, I sit around a table and I've got this really solid team, the project manager, the multimedia developer, and all these other people. But when I get stuck, I can't go to the project manager and be like, hey, you want to talk this through? They have no idea what I do. They have no idea what my challenge is. They have no idea, about the things I'm thinking about to engage from a learning perspective. So this is a way for you to have a peer group that are like working on the same things, talking the same language, and you can actually get feedback from people who understand what the heck you're doing. So that's huge, I think. And it's kind of like, if I was to say there was a benefit to this other than just learning the system and applying the framework, having a peer group that is working on the same project, coming in from all over the place. It's actually really cool, the kinds of projects that people are on. But also now having the sounding board of, am I doing this right? Or the approach, is this working? Is this the right thing to do here? So that to me is almost worth more than the actual training to actually have. Well, maybe not, but that is a huge part of it. And I think that that's almost understated. I didn't realize how powerful and useful that would be, because I always thought, they'll just come in and train. But to be able to talk to other people, for somebody who's by themselves 99% of the time working in their own from, A to Z, that's fantastic. So that's been a really big benefit. So anyways, we're starting the next cohort. Work camp, boot camp is starting in May. I'm capping it at 10 people because the goal is to help everybody get to a scenario script. I don't want anybody to have to, let's just say I want to make sure that everything's working perfectly for everybody. And 10 is the max that I can actually accommodate and make sure everybody gets the attention they need and their questions answered. So if you have any questions about that, post them underneath this video. Also, the best thing to do, like if you want to really invest in yourself and actually take this to the next level, because watching videos is one thing, but actually applying and having somebody give you tough love feedback on your project is the next best thing. I'll put a link underneath the video to book a call with me so we can talk about your goals and where you're at. And if the May cohort is a fit for you, then maybe that's something you should consider and maybe you can join us. All right. So I hope you have a fabulous rest of the Thursday, and I will probably talk to you next time. Either way, see ya.